Hi, I'm Dan Bumby. I'm the MD and founder of Samoda. Today I have with me Laurentiu, who is our head of infrastructure.
Good day, everybody. Yeah, I'm Laurentiu. I'm head of infrastructure here at Simoda. Been here about a year now, so
Yeah,
yeah,
cool,
been
cool.
interesting.
I think today's topic really is quite popular at the moment. Obviously, we're going to touch on AI. We're also going to touch on the global constraints that we're seeing at the moment in and around supply constraints of chips, etc. So, first and foremost, then, Laurentiu, what are the challenges you're seeing in the space of infrastructure at the minute?
Yeah, where do I begin? Obviously, infrastructure. The infrastructure requirements for any workloads, but specifically to AI, have increased. Not exponentially. They've blown up basically
Yeah,
in that area, and it's not no longer just the average company enterprise that wants to build their own AI. It's the big guys, the big names in there that are kind of gathering all of that infrastructure for their own AI builds in there, and that creates a bit of panic, a
yeah,
bit of quite massive price increases. We've seen some bets like RAM went up 3 times in
yeah.
the course of about 6 months or so.
Yeah,
Uh,
we've seen. I was just chatting to a customer the other day about the price volatility in the marketplace, and you look at, as an example, you look at memory, you look at GPU, you look at CPU, um, yeah, and hard drives.
yeah, storage
You
is
know,
massive.
we're seeing constraints across everywhere, and I think even the big boys are seeing those in terms of the AWSs and Googles of this world and Microsofts of this world. So in terms of our customers,
Hmm.
so what are the things that they're asking you at the moment when on a typical opportunity where you're engaged with a customer to add some value? What are they typically talking about?
Well, we're talking about the workloads that they need in there. If we're talking about an infrastructure refresh, the idea is to get the best thing in there, not just like for like with what they have right now, but improve on that infrastructure,
Yeah,
making sure that the workloads are provisioned right and getting the right hardware for it. I say hardware, but it's all about where do those workloads need to live, be that
yeah,
on-prem, a private cloud, the hyperscalers as well, and figuring that bit out is a massive part of the engagement to
yeah,
begin with. It's no longer okay. I've got the server. Here's a newer
yeah.
here's a newer server that's gonna do things a bit
A
faster.
bit faster,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
no longer that.
So if we take AI as an example, then so we've got opportunities where clients are talking to us regularly about AI, and they're talking about standard AI practices. They're talking about utilizing AI across all of their applications and environment. They're also talking about building their own AI platforms. And what I see at the moment is we're seeing quite a bit of difference between a business that goes for a public cloud and then also the guys that are saying, well, do you know what, we want to control this and do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Where's the balance going to be in terms of whether it's to go public or whether to go private stroke hybrid?
Yeah, it's got to do a lot with sovereignty as well, data sovereignty at the minute. So it's all got to do with the regulations that are coming out as well. UK is leading the way on that.
Yeah,
Data sovereignty is becoming a lot more important right now for a lot of companies. So public cloud, although that was the go-to in the previous 2 years or
yeah,
so, it's no longer that easy.
yeah,
At the same time, having it all on-prem for themselves with the constraints that are happening right now
yeah,
is again very hard to manage. So the idea is when talking to a customer about their AI aims and goals and what they want to do, is again figuring out what part of it can be in a public
yeah,
cloud. What do they need to keep close to heart and make sure that that data doesn't go anywhere? And we know that, well, we talk about AI. There's a lot of AI projects that start off in anger, and then fail miserably because it hasn't been provisioned right.
Yeah, we see.
Yeah,
I think just to build on that, we do see quite a lot of that, and I think there's a stat that somebody rolled out that 80 to 90% of POCs generally fail, especially in and around AI, and that just simply because you don't have the outcomes focused.
exactly. It is the outcomes, and again, going into a conversation saying, "Oh, I want some AI."
Yeah,
Well, it's not being bought by the pound or whatever. It needs to be a very clear process, and it needs to be outcome based.
yeah.
In there,
I think
definitely.
what we're seeing as well is like road mapping as well. So what does the roadmap look like for a customer? Because it might be the fact that it could be automation they're after.
Yeah,
AI is what they strive for, but automation and might be the thing that they go for first. And I think the interesting part around what we're seeing at the moment is where people do have are seeing the constraints around memory, around CPU, around GPU and hard drives, etc. And they're automatically think, well, I'll go public cloud, but then not necessarily, we look at our own private cloud solution,
yeah,
Samoda Cloud, and I think that drives or gives people the resources and the ability to be able to spin up services outside of the public cloud, and also guaranteed to be in the UK.
yeah. That is a very important bit in there, and yeah, we've got the Simora Cloud platform. It's all in the UK, so data sovereignty isn't an issue. It's very agile as well, so very flexible, up and down, whatever you need. Multiple workloads. We've got capacity in there at the minute, which is a major thing. We've seen the hyperscalers struggling for capacity in their own huge data centers and so on in there. So we've seen workloads being denied in terms of, oh, I want to provision this. Well, no, it's not that important. So there's a consideration to be had on that one. But again, back to the AI project. We've got the place where we can deliver those POCs. We can monitor those outcomes and make sure that we get it right. And then figure out where it's going to live, like where it's going to be its forever life.
I think we keep an eye on the progress of different LLMs and how we're working with some of our partners to look at how that we can provide an infrastructure that sits perfectly for Claude or maybe for Kimi or some of the other models that are out there. I think one of the bits that has been mentioned a few times to me, especially when I've been chatting to customers, is the ability to bring their own LLM to some infrastructure rather than having to consume something, having to consume Gemini, having to consume their own the public cloud platform.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where the on-prem, their own almost air gap solutions in there for their own data is really important there. It requires a lot of power to be able to do that. It comes down to investment as well, and that's where the split of the workloads in different areas. This is one of the most important bits to begin with. Even having all of that air gap bit in there, you can still run certain things in the public cloud, in a private cloud, while keeping your data safe on-prem. So just developing it in there and then going live is only internally.
So just one other part for me before we finish is we have clients that are using public cloud, private cloud. They're building their own AI platforms. They're utilizing platforms already. The thing that always springs to mind, and this always comes back to the same old thing, is what about DR? What about backup? What about recovery? What about protection of that environment?
Absolutely. I mean, putting that much investment into a platform, into an AI of their own, and not having the backing up capabilities put in place is one of the reasons why some of those 90% projects fail in there as well. Working on it, something happens to the production environment or the POC, and then you need to start from scratch. But that requires more investment. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg.
Yeah.
So we've got all the capabilities internally in Simora Cloud to do all that safely. We've got the Simora Super Cloud, which is like a distributed cloud storage platform where you can keep those backups safe forever. Nothing can go wrong with it. So that's massively important as well. And it's making sure the planning is done properly.
Yeah. So that we find that there's a lot of discussion at the early stages in terms of planning. You know, I want to use AI. I want to be able to utilize our infrastructure and data better. So we plan that. We talk about applications. We talk about their services. We talk about what their business does, what outcomes they want, and then what we really focus on as well at the back end is how to protect that and how to make sure that data is available and portable and accessible through Simora Super Cloud. And there'll be a lot more about Simora Super Cloud coming, I can guarantee you that. But I just want to sort of leave on what our customers can do if they're watching this around the global constraints. If they're looking at potentially wanting to roll out or investigate an AI platform or AI workloads, what should they be doing right now? Apart from talking to
me, talking to us, our technology consultants are available as well, obviously, in there. In terms of the current constraints, what I'm getting from all vendors across the board in there is getting the queue. In terms of acquiring any new hardware, it is very hard at the minute because you are getting in a queue with extra volatility at the time of shipment in terms of prices and so on. But the big message coming out of all the vendors is this is not going away. The constraints are going away. We've been discussing about the hardware equipment that is being manufactured right now. About 85% of it is already acquired by the big guys for their own builds, for their own infrastructure to maintain those co-pilots, Geminis, and so on in there. So that leaves very little for the rest of the market. But it's still getting into that queue, talking to the vendor account managers and so on, and pulling all leverages that we've got from our partnerships in there as well. It's really important we're talking about projects right now that the outcome is 24 months away. So
I think the early stage planning is really important. So we have a tool which enables us to map AI readiness, which gives us an overview of what your organization wants, what you're looking for, workforce, security, data infrastructure, etc., and plan a roadmap off the back end of that. But again, the constraints of whether it is private, it is public, or it's a distributed edge environment as well. These are all considerations we need to take. And I think the first and foremost is have conversations now. If you're thinking about something, speak now, because that's critical with the constraints that we're seeing. So, Laurentiu, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thanks ever so much for the chat. It's been brilliant. It's been that interesting. I've not even had a sip of my coffee yet. So
I need a new one as well.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers,
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.